I drank one of the uh, smells like socks in a bottle, kombucha, or whatever.
Kombu
I actually did find like
Monica.
a flavor I like. It was a mango toenail flavor.
Oh, Steve.
Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve, where communication matters. Join us as we discuss effective ways to communicate, bridge the gaps, and build long-lasting relationships within your business and life. Here are your hosts, Asha Prasad and Steve Harper.
Okay. Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve. I am your co-host, Dr. Asha Prasad, and with me is my fantastic co-host, Steve Harper. Steve, how's it going?
It is great. How are you?
How many cups of coffee have you had today?
I didn't drink that much coffee. I drank one cup of
Okay.
coffee, two green teas, and now a monster.
What is a monster? What is in a monster? Do I want
I
to
don't know. It's
know?
pure poison. I'm pretty sure they are not a
I'm
sponsor.
pretty sure that looks pretty scary. It
I
just
did.
doesn't
Oh,
have the
oh,
light.
oh! I drank. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
had one, but in your honor, today I had a meeting downtown. I drank one of the uh, smells like socks in a bottle, kombucha, or whatever,
Kombu- You had
kombucha.
the no sugar kombucha today.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Doesn't matter how much sugar they put in it; it doesn't taste or smell any better. And so I just go the no sugar because if you're going to sit there and have to drink it with your nose like this, might as well. I actually did find like a
Monica.
flavor I like. It was a mango toenail flavor.
Oh, Steve. You
What
know
are we
what?
talking? Yeah, I
One
mean,
of these days,
yeah,
we
when
should
you
have
come
this
back to the
on.
states, you're gonna have to guide and direct me as to which ones are not so
Well, no,
horrible. But
we're gonna make our own. We're gonna totally make our own. We're gonna get in the kitchen and make our own. So don't worry.
well, I have a an old pond in my backyard. That'll be a good baseline for the water because that's where it
We
starts.
can use that for sure.
Yeah.
This is the beginning stages. But anyway,
Anyway, yeah, we
anyway.
digress.
So
What are we talking about today?
so we have been covering the theme of struggle. And one of the questions that was posed to us, this is from a listener that said, that they're struggling. This is a person that's been in their career for a very, very long time. Okay. And they're wanting to switch careers, but
Okay.
they are struggling with having a clear path. They just
Hmm.
feel lost. What do you do? So what do you do, Steve? What do you do? Like you're trying to switch careers, but you don't like what you're doing, but you want to do something else, but you're feeling kind of lost. What do you do?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, the fact that you're asking it, right, is a good first
Right.
step, right? Asking the question about what's my next right answer, right? Or what's my next right
Mhm.
step that I can take, I think is a big factor. I think that the reason that you're probably struggling with this to a certain degree is there's a lack of confidence. There's probably what you know today and what you're comfortable with, probably what you're good at. And in making this kind of leap of faith relative to a different career
Mhm.
path, there's a lot of unknowns, uncertainty, and I can sense why you would struggle with that because you just don't know what you don't know. But you have to look at your track record and look at how many times did you show up with this same level of uncertainty in your career. And once you got comfortable, once you figured it out, and once you felt
Okay.
like you knew what you were doing, all of a sudden you realized, hey, look, I'm doing great work. I've,
Exactly.
been successful. And so I'm a big believer that you rely on the experiences of your past because they were, inevitably where, got you to where you are today.
Yeah.
And you're now ready to take that next big leap into something different or new or
Mhm.
just more exciting or more fulfilling in terms of a work career path,
Mhm.
etc. I think that's a key factor. So I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
the clear path is asking yourself what's the next right decision that I can make to get me there and to start to figure out how to line up those wins. I think so that you can start building that
Yeah.
confidence.
Definitely. You know what? I agree, Steve. I think one of the things is that whenever we're feeling lost, we should just stand there and just accept it for what it is and be like, okay, you know what? I have, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is behind me that I have been successful. And like you were saying, look at your track record. You know you can do it. So now break it down to just because you're entering in a new career doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. It just means that you just haven't had experience with it and
That's
it's a
right.
learning curve. one of the things that was interesting about this person, this was a person that I coached for a while. And one of the things that we had talked about too was that, and this is exactly why we hit the pause button on coaching for a while, because for him, it was about, I'm getting a lot of different input. I just don't know what feels right for me.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I told him, and I was the one who suggested that we pause the coaching for just a bit, because I was just like, you know what? You need to take some time to see what feels right for you. There may be people that know much more about the field that you're going into. However, only you and only, yourself, your unique self knows what you want to do with it, which how you want to be out there. So you need to kind of figure that out. Just because somebody else has more experience does not make them the expert.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? You know what I mean? It's
That's
it's
exactly right.
yeah,
Well, I mean, so
yeah.
so you suggested that their feeling of not a clear path was actually to clear the path.
Exactly, exactly. Was actually to clear the path. I mean, the reason why I chose, I mean, and I don't do this very often, except whenever it's necessary, of course. But the reason why I chose to pause the coaching, I mean, I gave him things to do in this kind of reflection time to be able to look at, because sometimes you've got so much coming at you and you're trying something new. You're trying to clear your mind of everything that you knew once before, and you sometimes you really need to just clear that path, literally, to figure out, okay, what do I want to put back in it? What do
Yeah.
I want to, you know what I mean? I think it's super important, because especially if somebody is trying to figure that out, it's not going to help them just to guide them the entire time, the entire way. And what I mean by guiding them is fine, but it's not okay to just tell them, okay, this is the way you do it, because what happens is that maybe there's another way to do it. Maybe there's another way that their own intuition is telling them to do it. And if I tell them, because I've had the experience, they can take it as advice, but it doesn't mean that it's the law. It doesn't mean that it has to be done that way. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts about that, Steve?
Well, I think it's really good. The sort of the image that popped into my head was how I pack my suitcase. Right. This sounds weird, but I
Mm,
have a tendency to overpack crap, and I'm not a very
mm,
efficient or effective packer. And so, left to my own devices, I will try and cram all this stuff in there, and then I'm like trying to push the cover down, and I'm trying to zip it,
right.
and that never works really well. Right. So
Yeah.
when I'm at home, like say I'm going on a business trip, my wife, always says, take everything out and we start over. We start to put everything in its place. And she consolidates it in such a nice, clean way that, like, when I get to my destination, you open it up, it's like everything is there and it's perfect.
Exactly.
And then by the time my business trip is over, I'm like trying to cram all that crap back in. And the reminder to me has always been, no, how you always did it didn't work. How
Exactly.
you were able to get clarity and how you were able to figure out how you get the ultimate result, which is to get that
Hmm.
suitcase closed so that you're ready to go forward, was to start over. And what you're suggesting there, at least the way I interpret it, was stop getting all the inputs and, allow
Exactly.
yourself the opportunity to start with a clean slate and
Yeah.
start putting these little pieces back together rather than getting five, things thrown at you at once. Start with
Yeah.
one, start to figure out, look at these things, these input points, these decision, elements that
Yeah.
are critical for you to review, like first and foremost, and how this got raised, right? Do I want
Right.
to make a career change? Like that's the
Exactly.
first thing.
Yeah.
And is this career change going to allow me to take some of the skills and abilities that I have that I'm really good at over here, and am I going to
Hmm.
apply them over there? So that's like number two. Number three,
Right.
is this something that I can see myself 6 months, a year, 2 years from now
Yeah.
enjoying doing? And then, you're starting to put these things back in order, folding them up correctly, putting them in the suitcase in a way that starts to create a sense of organization.
Exactly.
It removes the chaos and creates order, and it allows you to start to put these things together. And then when you reach out, like, well, okay, how do I get this other piece to fit there? Like, this might
Yeah.
require me relocating, or it might require more time away from my family, or it might
Exactly.
require more travel, whatever the case might be for this career path. I'm not trying to confuse people by saying suitcase packing and then travel.
No, like what? Wait
These
a
are not
minute. When
travel
did I
tips, mind you, but these are examples of how crazy my brain works. But you should see how I try and unpack this thing. It's not good. But the reality is, you get to those stumbling blocks, and then you ask for help. You
Yes.
have that conversation with your significant other. Reach out to a good close personal friend or a mentor, someone that has given you great guidance and advice in the past, and say, look,
Mhm.
these are my blockers. These are the things that I'm struggling with. And they can come back in and kind of give you a different perspective and look. But rather than, just having five people give five different opinions, which just creates massive frustration and chaos for you, it allows you to control the process a little bit and feel a little bit more confident about the path ahead.
Yep, that's really true. I mean, I think it's really important because then you get to pick and choose and you get to, I mean, the thing about it is that you've got a successful track record. It may not be in this new career. It does not matter. As a person, you know exactly the things that you need to do to make your life work. You
Yep.
just do. And then there's going to be obstacles, there are going to be speed bumps that come along that you're going to be like, you know what? I'm not too sure. Do I want to do that? And then that's when you can ask people for their input. But, just because someone has done it a certain way and has been wildly successful at it or has been, able to do exactly what we want, it does not mean it'll be the same path for you. I mean, Steve, I know one of the things that I think about too is I think about like think back to when you became a speaker, for example, for yourself.
Yeah.
Would you consider that you did it the exact same way as other people did it?
I think that was the problem that I had, at least initially, was trying to
Hmm.
copy what other people did. And
Right.
what I realized was I wasn't them. And there were
Right.
certain things that people did that I respected and admired in terms of how they captured an audience, or
Right.
their speaking style, their casual approach to, the topic, not relying on a PowerPoint continually, being able to
Right.
speak from the heart. And what I did was I took all those little pieces and eventually sort of molded it into, okay, so how does Steve show up and want to do that? Right. And I
Right.
think you kind of did the same thing. I think
Yeah.
the the natural tendency for us, especially in a situation like that, is to try and steal and or emulate somebody else that's
Yeah.
successful at it. And as great a speaker as you might be, or as great a musician as you think this other person might be, they're not you and you're not them. And
Exactly.
so you have to figure out how to make it how do you take those little bits to formulate an approach or a strategy to be the best you can out there in the world. And so
Exactly.
you just sometimes that's hard, and sometimes that's part of the frustration and the struggle, because I think,
Yeah.
to all the way back to the point of this, right? Which was, struggling with that clear path when you're trying to be all these different things to all these different people, or you're soliciting all this different advice. The path is way too crowded with
Yeah.
obstacles in your way for you to actually get quiet enough to be able to see the path forward.
Yeah, and I think that that's the key thing is to get quiet and figure out what feels right to me. I mean, just because this person has done this over there, great, I admire it, but is that something I really want to be doing?
Yeah.
Yes or no? And if the answer is no or maybe I'm not really sure, then you probably already know the answer that you know what, that's not quite the path. And I mean, I think it's normal that we look up to other people and we look at people for inspiration and motivation. I mean, we all do that for one another, which I think is great. But at the end of the day, you are your own unique person and you
Yeah.
have to bring that out into the world. And it may take a moment, to figure out who that is and in what way. And you may change and evolve, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Don't be afraid to also hit the pause button every once in a while and go, wait a minute, am I doing what I want to be doing? Or not, and just checking in with yourself.
Well,
And
and
I think that's how you clear the path.
that's
Yeah.
key. Yeah. I mean, I actually think that if you spend so much time focused on what everybody else is doing, you very rarely spend the time necessary on what you should be doing, which also
Exactly.
causes a whole area of confusion and frustration. And
Yeah.
that's where people struggle. Like, cause at some point it's
Yeah.
like, I don't even know who I really am intended to be, or who I should be,
Exactly.
because I've been trying to follow the guidance and advice of all these different input sources
Yeah.
for so long. I struggle to understand who the real person is at their core. And
Exactly.
you hit it perfectly. You start asking questions, you get quiet, you start looking inward, and you start asking yourself. And in this case, for your, for our listener that actually gave us this as kind of the topic they wanted us to cover is,
Right.
you know, this opportunity bubbled up for a reason, right? In your career
Exactly.
opportunity. And yes, there's fear and trepidation in making a change, and it's scary. But I go back to, you've probably had similar feelings in every big, turn in your
Yes.
life career wise. And you still made the right decisions, and you still accelerated yourself forward, and you still were able to be successful. This is
Hmm.
just another leap of faith that you've got to have in your skills and abilities. And ask yourself, is that really what I want to be doing? Is this the kind of job I need? Is this a kind of role or opportunity that I can really bring something unique to? And I can leave this, one environment where it's safe and secure, but I've done my part. I've left it better
Hmm.
than when I found it. Now I need
Right.
bigger and better adventures to go forward. And I want to do something, similar in my next role. I want to learn new things. I want to expand my skill sets and my knowledge base. And I want to bring that uniqueness that only I can bring to the table
Mhm.
for this job. And yeah, it's scary, but the struggle is not so much in whether you want to make that change, it's whether you're going to make that change and
Exactly. That's so
trust
true.
yourself to do it.
Yeah. That is true, and I think that that is one of the biggest things. I think a lot of people struggle with that too.
Yeah.
With anything, Steve, it's like, am I going to do it or am I just going to be sitting on the fence thinking about it forever? Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to get out on the field and play, or am I just going to sit there and watch everybody else play?
Well, it's kind of funny. I mean, I had a conversation with a fellow entrepreneur this morning. We met for coffee, and we were talking about where our businesses were, and
Hmm.
this person challenged me in a big way because it was, the conversation turned pretty serious pretty quickly because we were talking about what do we want to do with our next 5-10 years of our
Hmm.
lives, right?
Right.
Career wise, it was interesting because she perceives me one way as an entrepreneur. I'm
Hmm.
sort of in that like kind of mixed bag where where I perceive myself. But she said, I've seen you now in a couple of environments where you're talking about one thing that you do professionally. And she said, you lack that spark of enthusiasm.
Hmm.
And then I see what you do with Ripple. I see what you do with, your coaching and your consulting business. And you
Right.
love solving problems. You love coming to the table to, to fix, people that are really struggling.
Right.
And she's right. Where do you spend your time? What's going to give you the biggest bang for the
Yeah.
buck in terms of job satisfaction and contribution and all of that? But it was interesting because I really hadn't contemplated alternatives to what I've been doing, or
Hmm.
looking at things from a different perspective. And she was giving me all sorts of ideas how she scaled her business and watched it to continue to grow, but started slowly but surely extricating herself from the things that she doesn't like to do. And we've talked about
Yes.
that before, the delegation and
Yes.
whatnot. But more than that, making the business not dependent on her in any way, shape, or form, so that it
Exactly.
was an ongoing concern that she could make money on, but she didn't have to be there day to day. So she could turn her
Yeah.
attention and focus on things that she really liked. And I walked away from that conversation with a newfound perspective and a different
Right.
attitude and mindset about, okay, in 2023, what do I really want to be investing my time and energy towards, and what's going to
Exactly.
make me happy? And again, part of that, I think, to a degree, will be getting clear, getting comfortable, being
Yeah.
willing to take that leap of faith, and make sure that I've left the environment I came from, or that maybe I'm leaving behind in a certain respect, as
Right.
good as I possibly can, and maybe setting other people up to take it even further and even more successful than I could by myself.
Exactly. I think, you know what, Steve, finding that joy, really what makes you happy? What can you lose yourself in for hours and hours at a time and just have just as much energy as whenever you started, you know? I mean, I think it's super important to look at that. And I think we go through different phases in our life where those things kind of change and shift, but we
Yeah.
got to be in tune with that to be able to realize that. And you know what? Now, what better time is there than now,
Yeah.
really, to
Yeah.
do
I
what we
mean,
love to do?
tomorrow's not guaranteed, right? And
Nope.
why
Exactly.
not maximize the time while you have it, and
Exactly.
find a way to overcome, whatever is holding you back, Don't let that struggle hold you in neutral, and clear that path to the point where you can feel, you'll never have 100% confidence. Like back to our listener who brought this up in the first place, you won't be able to move forward with 100% certainty. But if you look at your track record from your past and where you are and why this opportunity has bubbled up and presented itself to you now, there's reasonably good chance you're going to be successful going forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just, take your time to just kind of look at that and be grateful for all the things that you've been able to do.
Yep.
And just know that you can do this.
You can.
Absolutely can do it. So,
absolutely. Well, this another great conversation, another great topic, another great input from our listeners. I mean, we didn't know how people would respond or react relative to this topic of struggle, but we sensed from just feedback we got from prior episodes, which we've got a whole bunch in the hopper. We want to remind our audience to go back and listen to some of our older podcasts, listen to, some of those past episodes, find us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel and see some of the work that we've done before. But this struggle thing is something that everybody really does sort of suffer in silence with. And so for us to be able to shine some light on it and bring these different perspectives to these different areas of struggle, because there are so many that we could explore, has been really fascinating. So I'm anxious to get the next one. And Asha, how do people give us their feedback on this episode, what they took away from it, or if there's a particular area of their personal or professional life they're struggling with now that we haven't covered already? How can they get those in front of us so that we could cover it on a future episode?
So definitely people can visit our social media, Facebook or Instagram, and DM us there, or drop a comment below the video. But be sure to go to our YouTube channel as well and subscribe there, and definitely comment there. If you're catching us on the podcast, it'd be great for us to be able to see you, or for you to see us, whichever way it is. I guess we can't see them, but be sure to head over there and catch us there on our YouTube and on our social media. Conversation with Asha and Steve.
Yep, absolutely. I am thinking though, we don't get that many views because maybe we need to put me in the little circle and you on big camera. I think that.
No way. No way. I think the other way around.
No, not at all. Not at all. And for those of you like me that aren't like as hip as Asha, DM, what does that mean? Dog me?
PM, DM, direct message me, private message. It's direct message. That's the way I use it anyway.
I'm just now part of the hip crowd. I get. No, I knew exactly what it was. I just wanted to make sure in case there's somebody out there like, hey, well, what is that? That sounds like some sort of strange thing. I'm not sure.
Oh goodness.
Asha's out there, but she's not that out there. It's, just kind of, but she is the leading hipster, making sure that people are on the cutting edge of these terms.
Yeah, right. That's me.
All right. Well, listen, Asha, this was a great episode. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the really great feedback and input on this one. I hope our listener really took something away. Just as a reminder for that person that raised it, or anybody else that might have thoughts or maybe struggling specifically around this topic. I mean, Dr. Asha and I will make ourselves available. If you hit us up, like Asha said, DM us, like the cool kids do, and say, hey, I'd like to set up a call, just an exploratory call. We do that at no charge to anybody, right? But some of those folks have turned into coaching clients for us because they need a little bit of what we bring to the table. But we'd be happy to just have that one conversation with you and explore this a little bit more in depth and allow you to ask some questions and get some input and feedback. But just as a just a reminder that we're here because part of the reason we do this is we want to contribute and add value to the world, and we appreciate everybody that tunes in and pays attention and shares this out there with their networks. So thank you for doing that. Asha, have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, Steve.
All right, we'll talk to you next time. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Conversations with Asha and Steve. We love to hear feedback and questions from our listeners. Please feel free to visit our Facebook page for more tips and information. You can also email us directly at info@ripplecentral.com for more information.